Hello, this is the International Schools Podcast. I'm your co host, John. And one of the things that we've noticed over the time, it's been almost 3 years, Dan and I have been interviewing people, over 150 different guests, actually more, but if you think of the groups, etc., but that doesn't really matter. One thing is every guest that comes on has a passion. And I think all of us as educators, as professionals, in whatever context you are, and whatever you're doing, maybe professionally, sometimes your profession is your passion. Sometimes your profession is a way to get an income, but you have a passion after you come back from work, or maybe you combine the both, or maybe your passion is something that you keep to yourself, or something that maybe you try to generate an income or generate some traction from other people. One thing is for sure that as international school educators and professionals in all different contexts, most people have some passion, something that just gets them excited, something they're super interested in, something that they might spend an inordinate amount of time researching or doing or spending hours trying to perfect it or doing something with a group of other people that is their passion. And one of the things that I think has been so interesting in my own career as a school leader and an international school educator, and I know for many people that I talk to, is how many educators and professionals in their professional context, be it a school or an organization, usually have a passion. And it's something you don't usually find out about people because often they kind of keep it quiet, or it's like their other life. They have two lives, they have the professional life, and then they have the personal life. And that often is something that is good because you want to separate work from pleasure or work from passion. But sometimes that passion seeps into the professional or the professional seeps into the passion. Well, today I'm really excited because we have an international school educator. Her name is Patrycja, and she's an author and educator. And she's originally from Legnica in Poland. And since childhood, this has been one of her dreams is to become a writer. She has been an international school educator in Poland, in Spain, in the United States, and currently in Switzerland. And she lives in France and teaches French as a foreign language. And with her background in education and a deep passion for literature, she's had the opportunity to not only continue teaching and sharing her passion for language acquisition, but also her creative pursuit, which is writing novels. She's an advocate of sustainability, and she often tries to infuse her writing with her philosophy of sustainability and slow life. She is, believe it or not, a best selling author in Poland. And she has come out with a series of books. Her second novel, 450 pages. There's a 3 hours of silence. And I am not even going to try to pronounce her new novel, which is the title's in Polish, but it is one of the biggest audiobooks on the audiobook platforms. So, Patricia, thank you for being with us on the International School Podcast. And could you just tell us the title of your new book? Because I didn't pronounce it in Polish because I think I'd embarrass myself.
Hello, John. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yes, my latest book is Plan Wybierz mnie. That's the first part, and Plan Zostań ze mną. That's the second part because this book is in 2 volumes.
Fantastic. Now, Patricia, you are not only an international school educator and renowned author in Poland, but you're also a parent and you are a mother and a wife. My first question is how do you balance all this and where do you put priorities? I'm just because you're doing a lot, but and also your books are getting a good audience in Poland. How are you balancing this?
Well, that's true. I have many hats. But of course, the most important is being a mom. So that's always my priority. But what's curious about passion is you will always find time for your passion. No matter how much you work professionally, no matter what's happened at home, you will always find time. And I remember when I started to write, I was young mother, and when you are a young mother, everything is new, and a newborn baby is not easy to deal with. But I started to writing at night because I was woke up by my baby many times during the night, and one day I just figured, you know what, I'm not going back to sleep. I will just work on my book because I'm awake anyway. So this is how it started, and yeah, it's just organizing yourself. And when I'm working on writing, uh, I'm not tired because I love it so much. It's, of course, it's hours, and sometimes you don't get enough sleep, but you love it so much that you don't even feel it. So I think that's the magic of passion, and this is how it works. Because if not, you're right, we will not be able to do all those things in one lifetime.
So one thing I like that you say is that your passion is almost like your fuel. However tired you are, if you're in your passion, there's this kind of magic energy that comes about. And also the idea, I like the anecdote where you're a new mother, you're up all night, and you're like, well, why don't I just start writing? And I think that's so interesting. Now, one of the things and I have read about your books. I am honest, I have not read your books because they're in Polish. And one of the things that I know is your books are suspenseful, and they're also very romantic. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think they fall kind of into the romance novel category. And tell me, how did you start with that kind of topic of romance novels with a lot of suspense? And there is this kind of, you know, emotions going on. There's always a mix of tensions. Tell me a bit about what made you decide to go with that genre.
So I will write fiction for women, and primarily it's just like my favorite genre, even for me, is a romance. So I just decided to go with something that I like to read myself. So it started with romance, but then when I write, when I imagine writing only romance, that seems like a little bit boring to me. So I decided to add some action, some thriller, even sometimes something more to it. And every story I wrote is a mix of genre. So I definitely like. I was wondering that, like, do science plots or do politics or business plots have their place in a romance book, romance story? In a love story, and the answer for me is yes, of course. Why not? So I used, for example, biofuels or politics, or how the different countries fight for their energy independence right now. And I put all this in a love story. So the love story is the main part of the book, but it's never the only part because I like to add things. Then when you start with biofuels and ecology, that brings you to greenwashing, that brings you to politics, that brings you to so many things that then you end up with 600 pages of book and you have to cut it because it's too long. So yeah, it's there's so many passionate subjects in today's world that I think there's always something that you can add to a love story. So it's not only a love story. If you think about, for example, my third novel, 3 Hours of Silence, it's just a story about love, but also about mental illness, about grief, and I add a missing child in it. So the people who try to find a missing girl. In 450 pages, it's about plagiarism and how the publishing world works with the biggest players in game, like best-selling authors. I added some killing there. I added some mysteries, but of course, the main story is a love story. So I always do that. I find it interesting. I find it different, but not everyone likes that. Some people, when they buy a love story, they just want a love story, or I don't know, a horror. They just want that. But and some I was criticized for that in by some readers, and that's okay with me. I understand that, but I always liked the mix of genre, and I still like it. So yeah, this is what I do.
So I have a question because during the day you're busy teaching children. You are in the primary school context. How much of your day-to-day interactions with students and your work sometimes are food for thought for your novels, or do you try to separate them? Because you're talking about one novel about biofuels and politics. There's one of a love story, but there's a missing
Mhm.
child. Are you really separating the two worlds, or do you find they sometimes intertwine?
If you ask me about my inspiration, I'm not going to be too original, and I will say that, yeah, the life inspires me. And so because I live in this international surroundings and international place, and I always worked in those international schools. um, it's true that that influenced me in my stories also. Not maybe specifically education or working with children, but all what is the main thing in my life. Like, for example, traveling. So me traveling, me working with people from different countries, me speaking three languages, uh, all the things I do, yeah, all this is present in all my stories. All my characters, John, are from different countries. There's the main character is always, for now, it's always a girl or a woman who comes from Poland and who travels to another countries, who changes, addresses often. And because this is what I know, this is what I lived. So I don't like to write about something I don't know, or places, for example, I don't know. So all this, let's say, all this outside shell is something I take from my life, and all the inside is a fiction story that I imagine.
I like the idea that you say your characters are people that have multiple addresses, a bit like your own experience, where
Mhm.
you've moved to, as I understand, Spain, you've been in the United States, in Poland, in Switzerland,
Mhm.
so you've moved a lot. Are you trying to make your characters autobiographical, or do you try to avoid that?
I tried to avoid that. I did my third book. That was the book really, really liked by readers. Um, Pretty sad story, but in this book, I used what we call self fiction.
Yep.
Yeah, self fiction. So you take one or two real facts from your life. It can be where you were born, or your name, or something that happened, and then you build all the fictional story around it. And this is what I did. So my main character name is Patrycja Gryciuk in this story, and I said the place I came from and how I end up in France. And all the other things in story, everything what happens is fictional. uh, I wanted to try that because all of my favorite writers, French writers, used that trick. And I liked it very much because I was reading the story and story was great, but I was wondering all the time what's true and what's not true. I said, "Oh, that makes story even better." So let's try this. So yeah, I did it once, but yeah, it's like 90% of the story is false, of course. But when you read it, you don't know what's false and what's true. So that's the interesting part. That's one of interest in this book. But in my other stories, no, only the thing with traveling and living with people from different countries and cultures. That part, yes, but never like my own life or experiences. No.
And it's interesting how when you did your self-fiction,
Mhm.
that you got a really good response from your readers.
Yes, yeah.
Were
I
you
mean,
surprised?
um, yes, I was surprised because this book is really different from all the others. It's a sad story, pretty sad story, but it goes back, to 80s and 90s when I was young. I think people like that now, this kind of nostalgia, and going back to those years. I even used the ending is not happy. It's not a happy ending, and I think people prefer happy endings, but in this book I tried to do something really different, and finally, yeah, they liked it. And this book was prized in some literary contests and prizes, and I was very, very surprised that people really loved it. But I love this story also. I mean, I love all my stories, of course. I couldn't choose just one, but this one is special, yes, because it's different from the others.
So you write in Polish, you live in France, and you've worked in international schools around the world. Have you ever thought about writing in English or translating your books? Or is there a challenge in being able to do that? Because you obviously have a relationship with a publisher in Poland, you have a Polish audience that knows you, your books are super popular. I think you were mentioning before we were on air, even one is considered a bestseller. Why not in English? Why have you not written in English, or why aren't they being translated in English?
So I when I was starting, I lived in US, and I was wondering maybe to start to write in English. At that time, my English was better than now, so my vocabulary was really rich and fluent. And I started in English, and I realized that actually I'm not good. I'm not good in English enough to express really what I wanted to express. So then I thought, oh, so maybe French, because I'm fluent in French. Uh, and I started, it was the same. So finally, what we called mother tongue, Polish, um, is my best language. I think I'm really good in Polish, like how to express what I want to express. And my trying in French, in English, turned up to complete disasters. So that's why I'm writing only in Polish. So I always have this question. So you're fluent in French. You're a French teacher. Why not translating your books in French? You could do that. I can't. Translating is just a job. You don't learn it like this. You need to you need to be qualified for that, and I don't feel like I'm able to. Um, Example, I I had one part of my 3 hours of silence book translated by a very famous translator from Poland. She's translating the Nobel Prize, Olga Tokarczuk. So she's the best of the best, and she accepted to translate one of my books. And she made a sample for me of 20 pages. She sent to me this sample, and while I was reading it in French, I was thinking, oh my God, that's another story. That's different book, because
Oh, wow.
it's so different, and it was really well done. But reading me in French with someone else's words, and there's always a word choice. Words are so rich, so powerful, so amazing, that you really, really you have to think what to choose. And she was really good at it. But reading it, I realized even more that, yeah, I can't do that. If you want to translate, you have to hire a professional. So that's why I'm not translating. And the third part of your question, why my books were not translated to English or other languages. So the reality of publishing today is that you need to have a big bestseller in your country to have even a chance or possibility to sell your rights to another country. And only the biggest people on the market can do that. So for me, for now, it was not possible. Maybe one day, I hope, because my books are taking place in France or in US, in UK. So it would be really interesting. But yeah, I cannot decide that. It's not my decision to make. It's the publishers, and the publishers try to sell the titles, but just cannot sell something that is not, the numbers are not big enough for English, for example, for English market, because English, you have America, you have UK, you have Australia, so you have so many countries. When you translate to English, that the market is huge. In Polish, it's just a little small market, because there's only one country speaking Polish.
So as I'm hearing you describe some of the challenges of being able to have a book translated in, so for example, you're giving us the context of the Polish market. It sounds like the whole publishing business is really tough. Can you kind of talk to us about your experience? So you're an educator, you have a newborn child, you're suddenly starting to write. What would you tell people? Because there are very likely other people listening to us who are also fantastic writers, might have written a novel or writing some books. What are kind of the challenges, and how did you approach this? You targeted the Polish market, but I assume that publishing journey could be similar in other countries, or is it very unique in Poland?
Well, I don't think it's so unique. Maybe a little bit different because of the size of the country and size numbers of readers, but still, the biggest difference is when I started. It was 2008, and it took me 4 years to write my first novel, and I published it in 2013. And so the market in 2013 was really different from the market today,
Oh,
uh,
interesting.
especially the self-publishing market, because I started with self-publishing. My first book was a self-published book. Why? Because I didn't believe myself. I thought that I have no chance to find a publisher, so I never sent my text to any publishers. I was just going online and looking for different publishers and seeing that it was so difficult. Like, for me, it was impossible to get in. So I decided, well, I'm not even trying. I can do it on my own. So I took all my savings and I found, like a self-publishing publisher, people that make your text in a book, put your text in a book and make it like the real book. And I hired them, and I self-published my first book. And in 2013 in Poland, that was a big mistake because the market was just starting. And the second thing is I didn't have any experience about publicity, how to make my book known, how to make my book to be seen online or in the libraries or whenever. So that was the biggest challenge at that moment, and it was so challenging. So I worked very hard. But I spent many hours to learn how to, make postings on internet and everything. I was never really good at it, so it took a lot of my time, some of my money also, because at what point you realize that if you don't buy some ads on internet or in press, you do not exist. So yeah, it was a lot, and that time I learned a lot, because I realized that I just can't do that. That's not my job. You need some professionals to do this. So I decided, when I was writing my second novel, that I will look for a publisher, that I won't self-publish anymore. And this is what I did. So my advice today for people who are starting is, try to find a publisher first. It's not easy, but it's possible. I find my publisher 4 days after sending my text. So, then you think, oh, why I didn't try with my first book? I didn't even try. Can you imagine? Today, when I think about it, it was so silly. But yeah, this is how, life goes. And I learned a lot. I met many interesting people. So, you do things and you learn from it. So but today definitely I will try to find like the traditional publisher, like publishing house. So from now on, I had the professional publishers, and then the work is much easier, because you have only one job. You just write, and then they take care of everything of your text. You write then you work with your editor, and then they take care of selling, doing publicity, and all those other things to do that you don't have to think about anymore. And that's the good publisher. You don't always find the good one. That's the problem today. And today the self-publishing market is different, because I think self-publishing, even on Amazon or other platforms, became so popular. So many people are doing this. I think it's easier today, but I don't know. I didn't try those, new platforms. Maybe we should, because as an author, you are not really well paid, for your job. You cannot live from this or maybe if you are best-selling author, like for many titles, but if not, no, you can't.
Now, you are still with the same publisher from 2013? Or you've
No.
changed publishers? So is this something also that you've learned with publishers, that you've had one experience and you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to try somebody else because I need this.
Well, yes, you definitely do, because for example, my first publisher, like the traditional one, they were very good. They were very good at advertising, for example. But the problem was, they wanted me to write at least one book every 2 years, and they want even more. Like, the best for them is 1 or 2 books in a year. But I was never I never wanted to write to have a deadline. I always wanted just write when I'm ready, when I have a story ready, the story I believe in, I like, and then when it's ready, I want to publish it. I don't want to have deadlines. So they didn't like it a lot, and on the other side, there was also in my private life complications, and I couldn't. My son got sick, and I couldn't just focus on writing. So I had few years break from writing. And so publishing houses, they just don't accept that. So they didn't want to keep me in their publishing house, because for 5 years I didn't write anything. For, they want to sell.
Yeah.
That's the business. I mean, that's normal. I understand that, but they didn't want to wait for me. So that's why I had to find a new one for my new novels.
Now, one thing is your novels are about romance. You talked about there's always the romance is kind of the centerpiece, but then you have other topics. You talked about biofuels, business, politics. Your characters are traveling. They often have multiple addresses. Do you think the type of romance that you write about is influenced because you've lived in the United States? You are in a bicultural family. You have worked in many different countries. Do you think the type of romance you're writing about is very much a Polish romance, or do you think romance transcends culture?
That's an interesting question. I don't think romance is the same everywhere. Yeah, I think there's some differences, Um, yes, for example, I like to read more like American romance than Polish romance. That's, I don't know why. I couldn't even explain to you. So yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what kind of romance I'm writing. Um, probably again a mixed. Probably again a mixed, because there's some parts of it that are always the same, no matter the culture. Like, your characters must be naive and simple and make mistakes before they become, responsible, knowledgeable, or experienced at the end. So that's always in almost every book. But they just must go through a lot before they find the happy ending, if they find one. But so that's something that doesn't change. But then, yeah, I think even like the dating process is different in, for example, US or France. So people have different ways to connect with other people. But then you think, well, with today's world, with all these apps and telephones and screens, maybe it's not so different anymore. I don't know. We should ask this question to young people.
Yeah. Do
If
your characters, are they finding romance online, or is it always more the traditional, where they're
mm,
maybe in a context, maybe they're at a restaurant, or maybe in a work situation, or they're traveling on a plane and they meet the love of their life? I don't know.
yeah, no, not online, not online, not yet. No,
Not yet. Not
I
yet.
didn't try that. No, in my last books there was a lot happening on screen, on messaging, because the story is about young people. So I had to put, they don't exist without phones. So I had to put a lot of a big part of the story on messaging, on social media, and everything. Um, and I have to admit that that was not an easy part for me. But if you want to be like true, you have to do it. So
So,
this.
Patricia, I'm wondering because you
Mhm.
said that was not easy having to
Mhm.
write the context of the messages. You talked about also sustainability and politics. How much research are you doing before? Because you have, I know you shared that you're super passionate about sustainability, kind of a slow life philosophy, really living in the present moment. So you have your own beliefs. But for example, let's just go with the messaging. Did you talk to your children about messaging? Where are you doing your research?
Yeah, so the research is a big part of the writing. If you want to write the story that people will believe, you need to do a good research, definitely. But I love this, so that's not a problem for me. Just to give you an example of before, for example, when I was writing about biofuels, I had to do a big research because I didn't know anything about it. But the subject was so interesting to me. So my research it took me about 6 months, and I was interviewing the specialists, reading, looking for information like everywhere. So I was at that point that I really felt that I understand what I'm writing about, because if you don't, the reader will feel it, will know it. So that was one example. And with last books about messaging and all this, online world for young people, that was challenging. And I realized that I can't be um, I can't be really authentic. So I found two young girls in Poland who are students, and I asked them to help me. We had an agreement, and they were proofreading my book chapter after chapter and giving me some tips and propositions to how to make it more today young people lives. So they helped me a lot, because I didn't feel like I was able to do it on my own, because I don't live in Poland since 2003. I don't speak Polish every day. I am not a young student anymore. So all those things together make this problem. Like, you can't write in this young people language of today Poland word, or UK, or I don't know where, because you are not using it. So yeah, that's true. I'm not using this kind of language no more. So yeah, I needed help, and they were great. Those two girls were just amazing, and I think the final product is good, because when I read all the reviews, I never found any single message saying, oh, it's not authentic. We people don't talk like that. So I think it was a success.
So authenticity is really important because, as I understand, you're telling us that, with the biofuels, if you took 6 months, you interviewed experts, you learned a lot because you know that the reader is going to want it to be authentic. They might not know much about biofuels, but if you speak and the context and the situations are authentic, then there's more kind of meaning to the book.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure that when you are reading stories, John, you will just see if there's something doesn't sound right. I don't know if I'm reading books in other ways, since I'm a writer, but like every detail counts. And actually, you don't have to go too much into the details of the subject in your book, but every detail you put in has to be true, because it's just you can see that if it's not, you will see it. And so it's small things, it's about some dialogues when characters talking to each other about something, and you can even like do one or two sentences, but it has to be true, and it's always purposeful. In a book, no matter if it's 100, 200, or 600 pages, uh, every word in this book has its own place in this book. I was thinking about every single word. You don't just put words like that. You choose them. So yeah, it's your knowledge about the subject is very important. And also, the second thing is, when you have a good editor, that's his job too, because he has to, you know, um, check that everything is true and everything matches,
Yeah.
because you can decide that you write about something that doesn't exist,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
but
absolutely.
it has to be logical and match everything what you wrote before and after, for example. So it's a lot of work, but it's just well, for me, it's not work. So
I get the sense, as you said that you spent 6 months learning about biofuels. You went and found two Polish young students to help you with the messaging. As you say, it's your passion, so it doesn't matter how much you have to take. We talked a lot about, how you being in a bicultural family, having lived in the United States, Spain, and other countries and worked, and how that might have influenced your writing. How much is Patrycja, the author, influencing the day to day interactions with the kids that you're teaching and the work that you do as an educator? So we know that the internationalism impacted your characters who have multiple addresses. There are always multiple nationalities and cultures. But what about what you're doing as an author? What do you bring into the classroom, or do you not?
Uh, I think I bring some parts of this in my teaching, in my job, because the first thing is, for example, I'm teaching French as second language or foreign language, and I had to learn French when I was 14. So I have this experience. I know how hard it can be. So I think that helps me a lot when I meet my new students every year and I see them, they know maybe 5 words in French and they need to catch up very quickly because in class, teacher speaks French only. So I think I take my experience, personal experience into my teaching, and a lot of patience, is needed. But I think the biggest part of me as a writer in my teaching is just like I'm a storyteller, and storytelling is always useful and always handy in with children, especially with younger children, like in primary school. So I love to work on writing with children. This part is more like with year 5 and 6s, when they start to write their texts. And it's just like in prose or in poetry, it helps children to express themselves. It helps them to spark imagination, and boost their confidence, and that's really important. And being good with words helps also in reading. So I work a lot with literacy skills. So I like to teach some styles and different techniques in writing, um, structure, narrative structure, how to improve it, how do you choose your words, what you need to add or what we need less, what is less needed to build a nice and an attractive text with a lot of juicy words, for example. And I think there's a huge work to do today with this generation, these young people today, on good communication skills. Because because you are the specialist in IT, so you know that people are young people spending a lot of time on screens today, on messaging and on social media, and words are even more important there because they are very short there. It's not like reading pages and pages. It's just maybe one sentence or often even just words. And we have to show them that words are very important and they have power. Sometimes it's very positive and encouraging, and sometimes they are very negative and can be destroying, with terrible consequences. And so in today's social media, young people must learn how to use the words. And
No, I completely agree with you. Do you
yeah,
think, as you're describing how you really spend time getting kids to understand the power of words and that words can have a very positive impact or a negative impact, do you find over your teaching journey that have noticed that kids are much more struggling to write and understand the power of words?
Yes, I think they do. They do because what's around them is different what was around us when we were children. Words for us was words from our parents or our friends in school, like oral language. And if we wanted to read, was books or magazines. We didn't read anything else because there was nothing else to read. Today is so different. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no more young readers. They are young readers. We see a lot of them. For example, in our school, I was working a few months in our library, and I was so happy to see young people loving books and reading a lot of books. But I'm sorry, that's a minority. There's not a lot of them today, and the most of young people and even children, if they are reading today, they are on their own in front of their screen, and they are messaging like with words the same. I can see this, for example, with my own children. When I message my kids, I'm writing in sentence. I have only words as response coming in. So that's this generation. And I think our job as educators, as parents also, is to show them that what you say but also what you write matters, especially
Absolutely.
especially on social media. So we can um, they can safely navigate in this dangerous, unsafe online world, because online world is very dangerous.
So for you, do you feel that your audience is not a young audience? You feel like because you're writing more traditionally in the sense that you're writing novels, fictional novels, who's your audience? Do you find it's not younger people, like the two young Polish girls? Had they read your books before?
Yes, yes. I mean, not before. No, they read them after. But I think my audience, it's more maybe from 16 plus, and a lot of them are um, women over like 40, 50. I had messages from grandmas also. So I think every age, not definitely not children, because I don't write for children,
Yeah, of course not.
but adults or young adults. So maybe it depends of the book. For example, the last one is definitely for young adults.
So, one thing, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but
Mhm.
romance novels have become very popular. And one thing that I went and did some research is that apparently there's much more not explicit sex, but there's much more sexual innuendos, and sex has kind of become an important component for romance novels to sell. What have you experienced? Because you're writing romance novels, are your publishers putting pressure on you? Do you sometimes write a certain way, a romantic moment, and they're like, you need to make it more whatever,
More spicy,
more
definitely.
spicy? Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. I was really surprised, but my new publisher, this is exactly what they asked. They said, "Oh, not enough sex, not enough of erotic moments. You don't have to." I mean, I said from the beginning, when we were talking about, before we signed the contract, I said, I don't want to write like really explicit sex, because this is not what I'm writing about. But I can add some erotism, but don't ask me to write books with sex like a main thing in it. But even in romance, like you said, what's selling today is sex. So I was asked to add a few more sexual scenes. What I mean by sexual scenes, it can be even sexual tension, can be a kiss. It's many things. But for example, that may be funny, will be funny for you. But they told me, like, when a young woman buys a book today and she starts to reading, um, you have to put something sexual, even attention, before in first 30 pages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she cannot wait more. So I was so shocked. I said, 30 pages, it's not a lot. Give me some more, to start my plot. And said,
That's
no,
so
no,
interesting.
no,
So,
no, too much waiting. So yeah,
Patricia, are most of your audience women?
definitely. Yes. Yes.
And is romance novel because it's geared towards a woman audience? I mean, are you thinking when you're writing, you're thinking about a woman audience, or you're thinking, no, it's a general audience?
For now, all my books were definitely written for women. Um, I started another book a few years ago, and that one was, I didn't think like writing only for women. That was like an attempt to reach men and women, but I never finished it. I never finished it, and it's still somewhere in my computer. I don't know. I just don't didn't believe myself in this story, and you know how it is when you write a story, you have to be the first one who believes in this story, because if you don't believe your story, why the other people would? So I dropped it and I didn't finish it. But maybe in future. But I think I like write for women. Even I, as a reader, I read a little bit of everything. But I think as a writer, I like to write for women. Yeah.
So one of the things that we always ask our guests is like, what would you say? There are educators that are listening to us. There are professionals that are working in companies and organizations that might be inspired by what you said. They might not go down the romance novel route, but whatever. What is some kind of, what have you learned from this experience that you think you would love to give to, say, some people thinking about it or that maybe are struggling?
About writing, you mean?
About writing, yes.
Writing is a great it's a great place to express your feelings, to show your emotions, and just to tell your story. And meaning, you don't have to write about your personal life, but some things that you create. And I think there's a lot of people who are really, really creative, and that helps to relax. That helps to concentrate on yourself also. And writing connect people. Like, look what we are doing now. We are doing this because you learned that I'm a writer. I met so many interesting people because of my writing. So that's, if you look at only this one thing, it's huge. I mean, I know now writers in Poland, but I know people passionate by books in many countries. We exchange, we read together, we talk about books. I mean, what a beautiful experience. So yes, definitely go there. Don't even wait.
Would you give up being an educator if your books were bestsellers around the world and only write? Or do you like the idea of having both?
Hmm. I think that I like both, but if my books were really bestsellers, I think I would have to drop teaching and I will go study to learn how to write, the script for movies. Be-
Okay.
because that's something that's in my mind for a few years now, and I would definitely use this time to learn something more and to write for screen. And that's my new dream. So, but that needs so much time. You cannot work in school and do this kind of studies full time. So yeah, but that would be the thing I would do. Yeah.
And coming back to the very beginning when you talked about balance, what advice do you give to people that have a passion where they spend hours but they have to go to work every day? What have you learned and what might be some advice you would like to share from juggling both?
Well, your passion will never take out your energy. Your passion will give you energy. So you will doing it even if you maybe have a little bit less of sleep or a little bit less of friends time or even family time. It's worth it because then you will have this energy and this happiness inside of you to do better your work and to be happier in your family and with your friends. So it's all like a positive circle for me. So just yeah, don't drop it. Just continue.
I like that idea that you always bring up that passion is a fuel,
Mhm.
and it's a fuel that's kind of limitless. You never run out of it. It's like a renewable energy, it's just like the sun, it's always there. Patricia,
Exactly.
thank you so much for sharing your journey as an author, as a writer, as a mother, and as an educator in an international school. And I just want to tell our audience Patricia has her show notes. You can follow her on Instagram and Facebook, and definitely do that. And if you have any questions, I know Patricia will be happy to answer them. Her books are available in Poland. So if you're in Poland, look them up, but they're not yet translated in English. But Patricia, I just had an idea. Maybe the next Netflix will be one of your novels. You never
I hope so.
know.
Thank you for having me, John. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our audience, thank you very much. Again, thank you for your comments. And we keep having more followers on our LinkedIn. And we so appreciate the feedback that you give and suggestions. We really are always feel privileged to have an audience like you out there. So thank you. And we look forward to catching up next time.